everyone, I'm Ben with the BTC Sessions. I'm here in Calgary, Canada, down near Eau Claire Market, and today I'd like to bring to you an interview I had with Naomi Brockwell. Now, if you're unfamiliar, Naomi is also known as Bitcoin Girl, and she's got a lot of great content on her YouTube channel, whether it be musical crypto parodies or interviews with a lot of crypto personalities. But this interview in particular is about her book called Billy's Bitcoin, and this is a children's book. I just bought it for my daughter as a new bedtime story, but we get into the motivations behind the book. So without further ado, here is my interview with Naomi Brockwell.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Do you guys enjoy my content? If so, there's two easy things that you can do to make sure you always know when stuff comes out. Number one, of course, hit that subscribe button. Number two, hit that little bell icon right next to the subscribe button so that you make sure you turn on notifications every time I put out new content. Now, onto the video. Hello everyone, I've got a very special guest with me today. I have Naomi Brockwell. I have been on her show a couple of times now, and most recently her crypto quiz show. For sure, check that out. I'll have links down below for her stuff. Naomi, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. As I said, I've been on your show a few times now, but this is my first time having you here. I'm very excited to have you, and I'm very excited what we're going to be talking about. But before we dive into that, for those of my audience that are maybe not acquainted with you, can you let everybody know who you are, what kind of stuff you've been doing in the space, and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Sure thing. So don't mind the honking horns. I am based in New York, and that is just what we deal with here. But I started actually in crypto. I was working for the New York Bitcoin Center for a while. It was based down in Wall Street, and that was kind of in the glory days. So around, I guess I heard about Bitcoin 2012, and then started getting involved 2013, making videos about it around then. And the reason I got involved was because I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a bunch of math nerds who were all really, really into it. And they explained it to me. And I have a huge passion for Austrian economics. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is like this Hayekian ideal of competing currencies. If this is actually something that government can't shut down, then there's something incredibly valuable about this. So what drew me to Bitcoin was the idea that you could create digital assets that couldn't be reproduced. This is something that we hadn't experienced before, and that it was distributed. It was a decentralized technology, which meant that there was no central focal point for government to shut down. We've had so many iterations of digital currencies in the past, but then the government could just come and say, all right, I'm going to shut you down, maybe even send you to jail. And for the first time, I was like, oh, wow, we actually have a shot at getting away from this centralized banking system. So that was super exciting to me. I started making videos. I have a Rockwell TV. And I chat to CEOs of companies. I test out different products. I do ridiculous quiz shows that you have been a part of before with people in the space, and news recap shows with panels and things. And I MC a lot of conferences in the space. So I'll do about maybe 20 Bitcoin conferences a year. I got back from the Free Coast Festival yesterday, and then in 2 days I head to San Francisco for the Litecoin Summit, and then week after that, yeah, I'm so excited to see you and finally meet you in person. And then I head to New Zealand for a blockchain conference there. So always really exciting. And for me, I just love emceeing events because it enables me to travel all around the world and see what's happening on the ground level in different countries. And I think it's so interesting because you've got different regulatory frameworks, different cultures. People are coming to crypto from all different angles. I mean, you look at the reasons why Americans are using it versus people in Venezuela using it. It's completely different. Then you have people like in Slovenia who are saying, we want to be the blockchain capital of the world, and they've created this Bitcoin roundabout. And it's just fascinating to see all these different cultures and how they're all approaching it, and meet people from different countries starting businesses. So that's sort of what I do in the space, mainly in film and television. And I also work as a producer for John Stossel. So that's my other job.
Awesome. Now, I'll do it here, but I'll do it at the end again. But where can people find you? So like whether it be Twitter handle or on YouTube, where can they find you?
Oh gosh, lots of places. So Twitter, I'm at Sky Corridors, and you can come hang out there. I'm always on there. It takes up a ridiculous amount of my time. I also have a Telegram group that actually some internet friends started, and I just kind of joined their room, but they call it Naomi's Pink Pillow, so I hang out there as well. And you can find me on YouTube at Naomi Brockwell TV, and that's where I post. I'll post a new video every day looking at something to do with tech or blockchain.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. So I'll have links to that all down below, so check it out. Now, there's a very important reason I wanted to have you on, and that it's going to creep up right here. This is Billy's Bitcoin, and you are a co-author on this, correct?
I am, yes.
Yes, and so I have a 1-year-old daughter. This is now bedtime reading material for us,
Yay!
and it's awesome. And she's a hodler, and it's awesome. And I'm excited that stuff like this exists. This would have been unthinkable a few years ago. Somebody saying, "Oh, there's a bedtime, children's book about Bitcoin," and now I'm living the dream. So.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, that book was released a few years ago, and to the sound of crickets, because it's like at a time when the only time the mainstream media is talking about Bitcoin is because it's like, oh, money launderers and drug dealers and bad people, and so having a children's book, it's like the market was this big for that sort of thing. But these days, a lot of new people entering the space, and people who are looking for something to just introduce their kids to it at a young age and get them involved and normalize it. So I think that's really cool that that people are starting to get into it.
So what was the process like? So I'm actually let's get into the why. So you saw you wanted to make this, obviously. Was there a specific reason why you thought I'm gonna do a children's book?
Absolutely, because Bitcoin is so complicated. So first of all, I was like, can it be done? I people are always asking me all the time, like, what is Bitcoin? I don't understand. And they've been asking for years and years and years, because they know that I've been involved with it for a really long time. And now they're starting to hear about it more and more. They started asking me about it. So Jason and I thought about putting together that book I think we started it was either 2014 or 2015 that we started that. The idea was just to normalize Bitcoin. So we kind of conceded the point that if we're talking to children, there's no real way to kind of explain something like this. Like if you give a child an iPad, and you're like, here, play on this iPad. You don't first of all say, well, an iPad is a product that was developed with this in mind, and the interior works like this, and you connect to the internet. This is how the internet works. And you don't do it. You just give it to them and they use it. So we wanted to create something that just normalized Bitcoin and could be part of their everyday vernacular. If it's a children's book, it's probably going to be a bedtime story. So that might be something that they have an affinity with from an early age. We just thought it was a great way to introduce people to it. So the idea was just introduce Bitcoin to someone in a normalized setting. This story is about a kid who gets bullied and his lunch money keeps getting stolen. So his dad gives him this tool where the bully can't get to his money anymore. It's on this encrypted device. You start like normalizing these concepts. Like we don't spell it out as such. We don't ever mention the word encrypted in the book, but like you can see in the diagrams, like Jason's an amazing artist, and he just kind of created these scenes that kind of help explain how Bitcoin can be used in an everyday sense without having to understand it first. It's just money. That's all you need to know to be able to use it. So Jason is actually all of the talent from this project. He's an amazing artist from Australia. He actually is the cartoonist from the longest running comic strip in Australia called Ginger Megs, and which is like syndicated into I don't know how many hundreds of newspapers across the world, but probably the most famous cartoonist, I would say, in Australia, and just an awesome guy, really funny comedian as well. And the two of us just got together and we're like, let's create this thing. Let's write a children's book and let's put it out there. And maybe not enough people really will get into it yet, but it could be a tool for people as they, you know, start to hear about it. If they want to expose their kids to it, this could be something they could go to. So that's how it sort of came about.
That's awesome. Now, what was the process like for getting it to happen? Like, what did you have to go? You had to find a publisher. You had to figure out what, like, where you were going to actually sell it. So what was that difficult?
Well, yeah, kind of. I mean, to start off with, I had to teach Jason what Bitcoin was. So he was really interested right from the get-go, and I gave him a bunch of books and he just kind of went straight into this, like, oh, this is really cool. I definitely want to get involved with this. And then he kind of took the reins from there. And the two of us, we just, you know, wrote this story. We had some meetings and wrote it all out. And then he went away and did all of the cartoons, which were awesome. And obviously with a book like this, like, you know, finding a publisher when the mainstream media doesn't even talk about this, obviously that's not going to happen. So we knew right from the outset we were going to self-publish, which is kind of the norm these days. Like, I love the democratization of the publishing space, the same with whether it's video publishing as well. You've just seen this amazing access to audiences that we've never seen, you know, before, like whether it's YouTube or if you use like decentralized platforms like DTube or DLive or whatever you're using, but there just seems to be access more than ever before. And so self-publishing today is just this fantastic option that I really recommend more people look into. Obviously, you don't get the marketing budget that some of the big publishing houses come along with, but at the same time, you get a lot more of the back end if you sell it. So if you're someone who puts a lot of effort into promoting their products and everything, then I really recommend it to authors who are trying to get into publishing these days.
That's awesome. Now, do you think stuff like this, presenting this to younger audiences, is an important thing as far as changing the way that society does things today? Do you think
Absolutely.
I keep on hearing the word normalization from you. So is that sounds like that was part of the motive here, right?
For sure. I mean, no one really ever thinks about what money is. And it's something that I'd never thought about until maybe like 8 years ago when I started reading Rothbard. And then I was like, oh, wow, this is a lot more complex than I thought and a lot more interesting than I thought. So I think it's really important to get people discussing these ideas and questioning ideas from an early age. If people are so used to just like saying, in Australia, we use Australian dollars. In America, we use American dollars. In Canada, we use Canadian dollars. You know, if people are always just thinking that unquestioningly, I think we've got a problem, because that's what's known as fiat currency, which means currency by decree. Basically means the government is saying, I'm creating this currency and we're going to say this is valuable because we say it's valuable. I love the idea that currencies can emerge spontaneously and it becomes valuable by some other mechanism other than decree, like a non-fiat currency. And so it's fascinating to me to see Bitcoin evolve with just like people saying, yeah, this is valuable. I find this valuable because I can, you know, transfer it instantaneously, because it can't be controlled by anyone. I don't have to get permission from a central bank. I don't have to get permission from a government. I don't have choices made for me, like where I can and can't spend my money. I think it's just change the conversation and say, yes, there are other currencies that could be available. They don't necessarily have to be government currencies. They can be private currencies. They can be entire ecosystems that cater to, you know, certain niches. You know, I know Andreas Antonopoulos talks about this a lot. Like, he foresees this future where perhaps we have thousands of different, like, you know, tokens intermingling and different ecosystems existing. So that's a fascinating concept to me. And actually Scott Stornetta, who's one of the 4 out of the 8 citations on the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper, he said that you know, people have a hard time getting their head around multiple currencies existing at once, because perhaps we are being tied down to historically what money has been. I think historically we haven't had the tech that we have today. And so perhaps it's there's an unnecessary stranglehold on the idea of money. And he said that perhaps if we stop thinking like about money as money, but if we thought about all these tokens as like equities, there's no problem with people thinking about all of these different equities flying around and being competing and existing simultaneously. So I think that in the future, we're going to see people reevaluating what money is, what it can be. I love the phrase, like, don't ask the question, what is money? Ask the question, what does money wish it could be? And let's start going down that direction. So I think changing the perspective of people is great. I think just getting children exposed to the word Bitcoin from an early age is great as well. I think that children today are so much more computer savvy than I'm ever going to be, because they have had computers from the youngest age, because they've had the internet from the youngest age. They've been exposed to these things and they've grown up with them and they've learnt, how it all works. So if they're exposed to cryptocurrencies from an early age, perhaps we're going to see a future that is a lot more free than one we currently have, where everyone entertains the idea that there can be competing currencies and that the free market can exist within the realm of currency. Perhaps they won't grow up thinking, well, government always has to decide what currency is. So that's kind of exciting to me.
Yeah, I think as you introduce it to somebody initially, when somebody's lived a certain way their entire lives, that change, there's always pushback. There's always, why are we changing this? I know the way things work and I'm unfamiliar with this, so it's not good initially. Unless you're a particularly open-minded individual, there's always that initial, I don't know. But with stuff like this, just seeing it, I mean, we've seen in the past few years, especially like over the past, 3-4 years, just people seeing the Bitcoin symbol around. There's this familiarization with it. And we just on your quiz show now, one of the questions was what percentage of Americans are now familiar with Bitcoin? It was 80% now. So 80% of people now have heard of it and in general kind of know what it is. And that's way up from just a few years ago. And so
it's amazing.
Yeah. And so people are now, they're seeing it, and it's just that it's kind of like you see an ad a million times and it takes a while before you go, oh yeah, now I'm familiar with that. Maybe I'll use it. So it's the same kind of mentality. Now you were touching.
Fascinating, just to on what you were saying just there. It was fascinating. Because I've been involved with Bitcoin for a long time, and I don't think my family back home understood what I was doing over there. They're like, what is this thing she's involved with? It's weird. I don't know if I like it. I'd call my grandmother up and I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm emceeing this Bitcoin conference. She'd be like, what? Bitcoin? She didn't get it. And it didn't take too long, around 2000 and probably last year, I think, start of last year, when I started calling home, she started telling me about Bitcoin. So then at that time, the media started to get into it. It was no longer once a month they'd mention it, and it would be in regard to Mt. Gox, scam, your fraud, drug dealer, black market. Instead, they started citing prices and talking China's getting involved, all this stuff. So I'd call home to my grandmother and I'd tell her oh yeah, I just got back from a conference I was emceeing. She's like, oh, well, the Bitcoin price went up to $7,000 here. And I'm like, oh, did it, man? This is a 93-year-old woman, keep in mind. And she was telling me the price. And she was like, well, it went all the way up to $10,000, but I think it's going to crash again. And I'm like, what is this? Well, and she's telling me things oh, well, China's really interested in it right now. There are a lot of Chinese companies who are involved these days. And once it gets to that level, that's when you know that something is working. We started off with a stranglehold in the mainstream media and no one really talking about the advantages or how exciting this tech is. And somewhere along the line that changed. And I think it was as more people entered the ecosystem, you saw the price go up. Obviously, news stations know that people will tune in if they start talking about the price. But at least that was something that got people excited and talking about this. And then you started hearing everyone talking about it, even my grandmother. So that was interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see how the narrative changes. Like, we're in a bear market, obviously, at the moment. This may last for years. We don't know. It lasted for years last time there was a bear market. So it's going to be interesting to see how the narrative shifts, and if we can still manage to keep people excited, because it is the underlying technology that's the most important thing. It's not the price, it's the potential of this amazing tool.
I love it when people that had no idea about it before are talking to you on the phone, dropping knowledge on you as if you're not checking Twitter and your price ticker 17 times a minute already.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Last time I went back, I went out to dinner with one of my closest friends and her husband, and she was like, Naomi, you got to talk to him because he's like trading all kinds of currencies. You got to talk some sense into him. So it's like the husband had kind of gotten into it and was like trading all these hot coins. And I just had to warn him. I was like, listen, don't invest more money than you're willing to lose. No one knows what's going to happen. I may be someone who talks about this a lot, and I'm very bullish on this and I'm very excited about it, but no one knows what is going to happen with the price at any given time, especially in the short term. So just be careful out there. And as long as they know that, then I feel like I've done my duty as a more informed friend.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to touch on something that you were talking about, some of the main points as to why something like Bitcoin is valuable and what it provides to people that we never had before. And I'm looking at this book, and I like that the story in itself, even though it's condensed to this tiny story about an individual, it can be kind of projected out. And I don't know if this was like purposeful as far as like a metaphor goes, but like you could look at it from a variety of perspectives of the bully representing central banks coming to take your purchasing power, or you could
his name is Fred.
Yeah.
Fred, if you could change it slightly.
Exactly. So was that a purposeful kind of projection, or was it just more you just wanted to be presented, or you can just lie to me and say that was totally, you were Shakespearean.
Shakespearean.
Yeah.
Well, it was definitely our intention to create a book that could be enjoyed by adults as well as children. A lot of the time in comics especially, you'll have, the written text, but then in the visuals, there's a lot more depth to that as well. So like we added in QR codes and like, encryption and all of these things in the artwork. And then the story itself is just a very simple story, this rhyming story about this boy who wanted to get away from this bully called Fred, who wants to steal his money every time he passes. So in a way, you could say that, and when we're coming up with the name, like what should we call? Like we definitely chose Fred because Fed is very close to that.
It would have been funny if you called him the Fred.
The Fred. It's also like, Fannie and Freddie are big like systems in America that have done huge damage to the economy as well. So yeah, we definitely worked all of that in. The idea, again, like we weren't trying to be too clever with it. It's really meant for children, and it is something that adults can enjoy and start to explain the second layer when they think their children are ready for it. It may not be something you want to expose your kids to right at the start. Like taxation is theft. We're not hitting people over the head with this book at all.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, my follow-up question, is this the last we've seen of Billy, or will Billy return?
This is absolutely not the last that we've seen of Billy. So Jason and I have for a long time actually been working on a few different stories. We have a series of books. Some of them are narrative and some of them are more like non-fiction. Billy explains certain concepts. So you will be seeing more of Billy. I definitely think this is a very low-level primer for people. Is just a really nice story that, as I said, the point is to normalize it, get this into everyday vernacular, get children hearing this and seeing it, and just get them familiar with it. Because I think at an early age, it's so important to just explore new concepts and to introduce your kids to new concepts. But definitely, if you have older kids who want to kind of understand a little bit more, then we've got some things in the works that will be helpful there too.
Awesome. I would suggest that you write a book called Aria's Altcoins after my daughter, but she's a bit more of a Bitcoin maximalist, so it might not fit.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we could have like a fight between Aria and Max and see what happens there. Some sort of a player.
Awesome. Now, where can people find Billy's Bitcoin? Where can they grab it?
So they can grab that. It's currently on Amazon. We did have a Satoshi box up for people who wanted to purchase using cryptocurrency, but we are actually setting up an open bazaar page instead. So just keep an eye on my Twitter and Facebook pages to find out details about that. But currently, it's super easy if you just wanted to purchase it from Amazon. Sometimes, like, people have written to me personally and said, like, Naomi, I don't want to buy through Amazon. I want to pay you in crypto. Will you send it to me? I will absolutely do that and write a nice note to whoever it's for as well, if you would like. So just hit me up on Twitter, and that's the easiest way to go. But yeah, the whole thing with this book, it's been really fun. It's I also have a What is Blockchain book coming out, which is not Billy related at all, but is more like you're talking to awesome people in the industry and just getting their perspectives. I think that these are concepts that that can be really best explained if you hear a bunch of different perspectives. And that's what I've come to realize. Like, I find that I'm just constantly learning about this tech, the more people that I listen to. And I think it's really helpful to expose people to smart people who have different ideas about this tech. So that's the sort of direction that I'm going in at the moment. And just continuing to make videos as well, explaining this stuff and hoping that people get excited about it. Yeah, I'm super excited about the tech and about the future of it. So I'm hoping that catches on.
Awesome. And can you tell everybody one more time where they can find you, Twitter, YouTube, that stuff?
Yep. So my YouTube address is Naomi Brockwell TV. And actually, if you search through, you will find my Bitcoin 101 series starring the one and only Ben Perrin. So you can check those out as well. We did some videos on should I pause for a second? We've got.
It's okay. It's all we don't censor here.
No, I'm just like it's like sirens going. New York is a crazy town. So we did Bitcoin versus gold video, you and I, and sort of like what is Bitcoin and all of these things. So you'll be able to find them on my channel and some of my more recent interviews as well. You can find me on Twitter, always on there at Sky Corridors. I'm on Telegram, I'm on Discord, I'm on Steemit, I'm on BitChute, I'm on Memo.cash, I'm on Minds.com, I'm on yours.org, I'm on library.io. There are a bunch of things. I really get into the whole decentralized platform thing. I'm really into finding as many alternatives as I can in case my channel gets censored. I've seen a lot of Bitcoin people get kicked off with no recourse, and their videos and their communities just lost. So I'm very careful to post and be active on a bunch of different things. So pretty easy to find if you go searching.
So basically, turn on the internet and you will find Naomi.
I am on the internet, and that just another anecdote. It reminds me of my grandmother. So I started doing videos with her about Bitcoin because I was like, she is so adorable. The world needs to see this. And we were in a and one of the she gets everyone asks for more videos with her. They're like, can we see Hazel again? Because she's just so delightfully adorable. But we were in a store at the start of the year together, and we were talking about Bitcoin, and she was talking about me and bragging about me as grandmothers tend to do. She's like, yes, my granddaughter makes videos about Bitcoin. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And she's like, yes, she's been putting me in the videos, which I really don't like. She's, put me in 2 videos so far, and now I'm on the internet. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Don't think my grandmother knows what the internet is. She knows what Bitcoin is, doesn't quite know what the internet is. And then she said, and one of those videos went viral. At least 100 people watched it. And I'm like, this is the most adorable thing. So you will also, on my YouTube channel, find videos with my grandmother that went viral with almost 100 people watching it if you search there. So
break
Always,
the internet.
I know, she's just so adorable. So
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I got to say again, I very much appreciate you coming on, inviting me on your shows previously,
absolutely.
and for this wonderful little present for my daughter that will help her know what sound money is as she grows up.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always into teaching kids about sound money. Well, thank you so much for getting the book as well. Like I
Yeah.
love that I've created something that parents can share with their children. I just think that that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And guys, everybody go check out the links down below. And if you've got a kid, or if you don't, you just like pictures, grab a picture, a copy of Billy's Bitcoin. Thanks, Naomi.
Thanks so much, Ben.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe, drop a tip if you're able to, and share this video. Also, if you'd like to help the show in another way, check links down below to either check out Naomi's channel or to grab yourself a hardware wallet to protect your crypto. I'll see you guys next time on the BTC Sessions.